Are you a sex worker looking to build a new website or a website redesign? Then you'll want to consider Fox Digital. They did a fantastic job designing my website, Stripped by Sia. If you want your website done, mention that you're a listener of the show at foxdigital.design for 20% off. Tell them I sent ya. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Stripped by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am your host, Steph Sia, aka Kimchi on Stage. Oh my god, you guys can finally find me on stage. I am back in the game again. I am a little shocked as well, but you can find me, I think, by the time this comes out, you can find me in a week or so at Shaker Show Lounge. I'll be there from November 14th to 18th. Come say hello. Come tell me how much you love the show, or tell me something interesting about your life, and of course, buy me a dance. Beyond being a dancer, I'm also a cam model. I'm also an OnlyFans creator as well, and I was a sugar baby for many years ago, and that's how I started in the industry. And this podcast, if you're brand new here, this podcast is all about destigmatizing sex work because, as you know, our work is highly, highly stigmatized. It's very vulnerable. It's very isolating. It's a lot. As much as the money is really good sometimes, there's a lot that comes with the job. So I kind of use this outlet as a way to express people's stories, to tell people's lived experiences on the podcast. And these guests come in every single week. They are from different corners of the industry. We talk about different topics, ranging from what we're talking about today, like anon accounts, toxicity, whorephobia in the industry. We talk about the goods, the highs, the lows, risks. My gosh, like pretty much every angle of the industry. So you, the listener, can get a really transparent approach to what sex work actually is. So this week I'm bringing on a guest, and you're gonna have to wait and stay tuned because she is amazing and I love her blog, which is really great. But we're going to be talking about toxic anon accounts, and if you don't know what anon accounts are, stay tuned. We're going to break it down all for you. But before we get into the meat and the bones of everything today, just want to say hello to my wonderful Patreon subscribers. Thank you so much for, I guess, being here on my side and wanting to support the show. It's I do the show by myself on a weekly basis, and I have been doing so for the past 4 years. So I really appreciate the support. I just want to say hello to those who are on the top 2 tiers here. You guys get a little fan recognition shout out. Just want to say hello to Snoo from Germany. We've got Amy Taylor from New York, B York from Seattle. We've got Eric Arajo, Moxie Mayhem, Selena Money, Geyser, Ted McGuire, Justin Erickson. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for supporting. And some of you have been supporting since day one, since I launched this over a year ago. So thank you. If you're curious and listening on how to support the show, you can become a patron, and that enables you to get exclusive access to video content for everything season 5 and over. And we also get bonus content, which you no longer get publicly, but there's some really great nuggets that are in there, including my my draft keynote speech at the sex worker conference I just did not too long ago, and some other great goodies. And of course, your money helps pretty much fund my website because there's cost to that, as well as me attending adult industry events, which I'm not going to be doing anymore for the rest of the year. So if you want to check it out, it's patreon.com/strippedbysia. You can check out the different tiers there. And if you like my show, you might like other shows like this. So feel free to check out my network as well. We have Skyhawk After Dark TV, which is a adult industry network that has a lot of different adult industry related podcasts, videocasts, featuring a lot of people that you might have heard on the show here as well. So if you want to learn more about our wonderful industry, go check them out at skyhawkafterdarktv.com. And last but not least, I mentioned your Patreon dollars are going towards funding my website, and that is made by Fox Digital. So Fox Digital, aka Anthony Joe. He's a friend of mine. He's a sex worker ally. He helps sex workers build their websites or, take down your old website, build something new for you. Because as we know, website presence and online presence is super, super important. So he is giving all listeners of the show 20% off. So you can go check him out. It's foxdigital.design and tell him I sent you for 20% off. Now, we finally made it here. If you fast forwarded, the range is between 4 to 5 minutes of me just rambling on about that kind of stuff. I'm sorry I have to do it, but I am very excited to bring on today's guest. We have the lovely McKenna King, fellow Canadian babe over here, hailing from Ottawa in the Ontario, Toronto area, who's going to be talking to us about anon accounts or anonymous accounts. And if you are a Twitter, or sorry, it's called X now, if you're an X user, you'll know that there are a lot of anon accounts that have existed since forever. And they can be fun, they can be satirical, but I don't know. We've just noticed in the past year or so that like my feed is just not great stuff anymore. Isn't funny anymore. It's just like bashing other people, taking other people down, lots of harassment going on. So I brought McKenna on because I actually stumbled upon her and she wrote this fabulous article on her blog. By the way, if you have not checked her blog, only on onlymckenna.com, it is great. She is a great writer, well spoken, and I can't wait to shoot the shit with her over the next hour. But enough of me talking. McKenna King, are you there?
I am. Hi.
Hello. So excited to have you on the show today. I am super stoked to talk to you because I know that you're really opinionated and I also am as well. So I just feel like we're going to get along great. But I feel like I did a pretty like okay introduction of who you are. Based on like the
Yeah.
very little that I know of you, just from the online. But would you mind giving the audience a little breakdown of who you are, and yeah, in your own words and terms?
Well, I guess there's not much more than what you said. I'm a full service companion. I'm based out of Ottawa, but sometimes I'll travel a little bit. It depends though. I'm a homebody, so I like to kind of stick around Ottawa. But yeah, I just started a blog. I'm dipping my toes back into making content. So hopefully, we'll see where that goes. It kind of depends on, timing and how much they can put on my plate. Yeah, but
Yes,
that's just a
lots
little bit
lots of
about
work with
me.
that.
Oh
Yes, so great,
yeah.
and like yeah, as you know, and a lot of us know, there's so much freaking work that goes on with content creation. But as we are saying, yeah, like I had come across one of your tweets talking about a blog post that you had written about toxic anon accounts. But before we kind of get into that, I'm also curious, and I already know a little bit about you from some of the blogs that I read about you. But why don't we tell the audience too, because they can get to know you a bit better as well. But what was your start in the industry? Like, how did you get started? How did you get yourself here? What is the McKenna King story?
So I guess my introduction into the industry was through the erotic massage parlors. And I, like you said, I wrote a blog about it. I stayed in
Spicy.
that form of sex work for a few years before finally like gravitating into just independent full service work, which much like prefer. But yeah, I started in massage, and I did for the most part enjoy that kind of sex work. I didn't enjoy the environment or you know third parties involved in managing that kind of sex work. But yeah, and I've been working fully independent for I'd say close to 3 years now.
Amazing.
I think it was
So good.
beginning of the pandemic when I went like fully independent. Yeah, but it's
Oh,
always a
wow. I didn't
weird,
know
it's a
that.
tricky transition. Yeah, yeah, but
Yeah. I
so
mean,
far so
like,
good.
sorry. Yeah, yeah. And that's good to hear too. And like, I know, like, I haven't had a ton of erotic masseuses on the pod, at least not in recent seasons. But like, how did you like? I just want to get more information, but like, how did you find out about the massage parlor industry? Like, how was there an ad or something? Is this something like so a friend of yours told you, or how did you stumble upon that?
Yeah. It was actually so my ex high school sweetheart boyfriend's sister. We
Oh,
kind of
whoa!
hooked up one night, and things led, from a few drinks to another, and
Oh my gosh!
she was living a pretty lavish lifestyle for a single mom. And I had some questions. I was like, how the fuck are you affording this? I was working three
Hmm.
jobs and I couldn't even live on my own at that point. So I had a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, yeah, well, at first it started off, well, I have a boyfriend who does really well for himself. He's import,
Hmm.
export, something like kind of bullshitty like that. And I was like, okay, you have a
You're like, I'm not
boyfriend,
buying
huh?
it.
Well, I mean, she did have a boyfriend, but it was actually a client who she met through the spa, like massage
There you
parlor.
go.
They ended up hooking up, and but yeah, she was the one who told me about that whole world. Like, and I honestly, I was
Wow.
like, it blew my mind. Like, I obviously came into this with a lot of misconceptions and like this idea in my head of not even the massage industry, because I didn't even know that that was really a thing. Like, I'd heard people joke about, like, the rub and tug, but I never like
Yeah.
put much thought into it. And I actually almost
Hmm.
immediately assumed that like massage parlors were just like an Asian massage parlor. Like, I didn't think it was like a
Hmm.
Canadian thing that was popular, or so just a lot of misconceptions. But yeah, she kind of just set up an interview, told me like, here's who you call. I went in with a resume. I went in with a resume, and
Did you? Wow.
I had no idea what to expect. I was dressed very like professionally. I think I was wearing a skirt, but still, and the questions were not what I
Profesh.
was expecting at all. So
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
but it just, yeah, just snowballed. Yeah.
Wow. That is wild. I did not expect that story at all. That took a turn.
My first blog post is my like origin story, where I go into that, because she was also my first like lesbian experience, and I thought that was kind of
Oh my
funny that
gosh.
that's what led me into, I guess, sex work. But yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah.
That's such a great
Mhm.
story. I love that.
Just gonna say, I still think it's the funniest thing that I actually ended up hooking up with her, but not really her brother, even though me and her brother dated.
That is really funny because
It
you were trying
wasn't
to like
meant to
tell me the
be.
connection. I was like, oh, no, definitely not meant to be, but that led you to greater, bigger, and better things and kind of led to where you are now independently. So, yay, quite the story. I mean, like when you first started in the massage world and you said you had some, I mean, you named a couple of misconceptions, but once you actually got into the work, was it completely different than what you had anticipated? How was that experience for you?
Um, I don't think it was different than what I anticipated. Like, I kind of got the rundown, like the idea of what would be happening.
Hmm.
That, I would be giving an erotic massage undressed. Some girls, they might keep a little bit of a lingerie on, like everybody has their different boundaries, but I wasn't walking into it completely naive. I knew that there was going to be a
Good.
hand job involved. What I didn't understand, though, was that at a lot of these places, even though they say it doesn't happen, there are a lot of extras that happen. By extras, I mean, like, some guys are going to want a blowjob, some guys are going to want full service. And um, that wasn't what I was expecting when I entered into it. But very quickly, you learn just from the environment, from the other girls that are working there, um, the expectations, and well, or what you can and cannot offer, or just the different uh, clients that are going to come in and what they're looking for, and then
Right.
it's totally up to you and your prerogative, and in how you want to approach it.
Totally. Did that make you uncomfortable at any point, like in the beginning, or were you shocked at that before, or were you pretty green, like you never thought like this is gonna happen, kind of thing, because that's what they say is not supposed to happen, or
Honestly, I wasn't uncomfortable, not just because I was already a little bit of a slut, but also because I was just very comfortable with my own body. I was very I came into this work from working in healthcare, so I was very comfortable seeing other people's bodies in different stages of undress, and like just
undress?
different bodies completely. Yeah. So I
Right.
wasn't, I wasn't uncomfortable being next to a naked man or touching a naked man or anything like that. It was just it's kind of like, oh, okay, now I get paid more to actually touch a naked man.
I love that. That's awesome, and of course that led you to you branching off, transitioning into independent work. And how was that transition for you? Because I know sometimes that can be a bumpy slope, trying to navigate and do things on your own and not having the agency or anything, a third party there to assist you. How's that for you?
Actually, I think that is the most challenging part when you are transitioning into a different form of sex work, because if you don't have someone like almost a mentor or some other support, then you don't really know where to look. Like, I'm sure you can Google, everything about sex work, but it's not the same as having somebody there to kind of guide you and show you the ropes, basically. So I think I'm pretty fortunate because Ottawa has a really tight knit community. There's a collective here of experienced sex workers who do try to support and like give resources to newer members to the community. But my biggest advantage was when I actually joined Twitter or X, whatever, because it just unlocked so much more knowledge that other sex workers, not just in Ottawa, but all across Canada, North America, the UK, just all the knowledge that they were sharing already. And
Hmm.
I just started picking up things, like learning a little bit more about how uh, independent sex workers were running their business, how they were screening, like little things that you need to know to run your own business successfully. And I'm not going to say it wasn't a bumpy ride to get there, because it definitely was. I made plenty of mistakes, but the community that we do have in Ottawa, and like the collective that we do have in Ottawa, that was even more helpful, because without that I wouldn't have had safe places to work, or like a good idea of hotels that are safe to work out of, and things like that. So I think it's one of the reasons social media has been so good for sex work, because it allows us to have community. It allows us to connect with one another and find one another even within our own smaller communities, like in Ottawa. Because if I hadn't have found Twitter, I wouldn't have found the collective in Ottawa. So yeah.
I love that. And I know that we're going to definitely go into this, but like social media has definitely transformed a lot of our lives, not just in sex work, but of course outside in our personal lives. It's a big part of most people's daily daily scroll and daily things to do. But can you talk about how like social media has specifically transformed the sex work industry?
Well, like I said, I think the knowledge that you can glean from social media has been one of the biggest ways that it has transformed sex work. Just the ability to find information easily from other sex workers, just discover other experiences, discover more people around you that could be supportive or share resources. Um, it's I think social media has been both like a blessing and a curse in sex work. Um,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
and I think
Elaborate.
that is I think it's because it gives us this space where it's, obviously there's still stigma and judgment and whatnot, but it gives us a space to be ourselves, to vent, to share. But also, I
Hmm.
think it because so much of it is also women sharing marketing and presenting this persona of themselves, we can lose sight of what's real, just for ourselves. I'm not even talking from like the
Oh
client
yeah.
perspective, but we're exposed to so much like just glamorization of the industry. So if
Oh
you
yeah.
internalize that and you continuously
Hmm.
see it every single day, you're making comparisons that aren't healthy. Like you're either you're physically
Hmm.
comparing yourself to other women, their bodies, like, or just the success. You think like, why am I not getting a fly me to you? This girl, yeah, she's beautiful, but I'm beautiful too. So why am I not getting that kind of
Hmm.
success? So I think it's like a give and take. Like it can be great in some ways. It can also be really unhealthy in other ways. And it has to be like a balance.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, McKenna, because that is so real. It's a lot of that comparison game. I'm also very guilty of that, and then that kind of feeds into like my body dysmorphia and just not feeling good in my own body and my own skin. And yeah, when I see like all these like Cash App or Venmo, like transfers and stuff, of like, oh my gosh, they're making so much money. I'm like, holy shit. And then like you kind of compare that to yourself and be like, why can't I make that money? Like I am so far from that. And then you kind of internalize that and it kind of just eats you up inside, which as you mentioned is so not healthy. And it can really, really be a lot. And that's why I think it's important for us as sex workers, but also people to take like social media breaks every now and then, get off the app, experience real life. Yeah, it can be
Touch some
really
grass.
slippery slope. Yeah, touch some grass, seriously. But I mean, going along with this kind of topic, we want to talk about anon accounts, and maybe we can start off by defining what an anon account is for those who are not in this industry, and we're just speaking this special lingo. But can you define what an anon account is for us?
So I think specific to this industry, to sex work, and a non-account is just a separate anonymous account on usually I'm saying just Twitter, but I guess it could be Instagram or other social medias, but I'm saying specific to Twitter. Um it's just completely separate from that sex worker's main persona. And it's it can be, satirical and funny, or it can be an outlet for them to express their trauma or bad experiences in the industry, or just shit posts, or the things that they wouldn't feel comfortable saying on their main social media account. Because then if they were to, I guess, almost like break the fourth wall on their main social media, they're not in their brand anymore. They're now allowing their
Yeah.
clients to see a darker side of the industry that they, it could be damaging to their business, or even just opinions
Hmm.
that they do have that they know aren't popular opinions. They're not going to share that
Right.
on their main account because they know there's going to be backlash either from other sex workers or from just people in general, just lurkers on social media or clients themselves.
Yep.
They
Hmm.
they need that outlet to express those views. And it's it's not always, I don't think, healthy. It's not always positive, but
Yeah.
that's what we have
Yeah.
to know.
Especially like, yeah, especially lately too. Cause like, I don't know, like last year and a couple of years ago, I just got a lot of satire accounts, which I find so funny. But then nowadays, I don't know what it is, if those accounts got taken down or like the algorithm is just showing me all the negative shit. But there's been a lot of negativity, and I feel like people hiding behind these anon accounts and like using that and weaponizing people through it, which I think is so problematic and honestly a little cowardly as well. But going back to our conversation, talking about these anon accounts, they're anonymous, so we don't know who they are. Who do you think are behind anon accounts? Like, I know it could be like sex workers, as you mentioned, that have a main account. I know that we want to talk about clients also trying to take up space in our industry, trying to make these anon accounts as well. But who do you think these anon accounts are comprised of?
And I guess this is just my personal opinion, but I would say it's like the 1% where it's actually a client starting an anon account to, I don't know, just stir up the pot, I guess. I feel like it is honestly women who are, they need an outlet, and they don't have a healthy community to vent to, or like that community off of social media to, share and actually be vulnerable with, and like just release any negativity of like, this was a bad day, or you know why am I not being successful, why, or like whatever you determine that success is. Just being able to share those deeper, darker feelings. um I think it might just be, unfortunately, sex workers who, they don't have anywhere else to share these thoughts. They don't, and then it does turn into a negative, a non-account where they're just venting everything online, because it's the safest space to do that, without any judgment from peers outside of sex work, or without any stigma from other people who maybe they do know in the industry, but they don't want to share those things. They feel like there's going to be more judgment to, share it with somebody personally. um so yeah,
Right.
I feel like maybe it's a very small
Yeah.
percentage that's actually a client, but it's more a
Yeah.
larger percentage of sex workers who are having a hard time.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point to make, and I also have to agree with you as well. Like, I don't think there's a whole ton of clients that do that. Maybe the occasional one that's really bored, but generally speaking, not really. But
Yeah.
as you mentioned, like, you know, like people don't really have. Some people don't have outlets because they're doing this work anonymously, and because it could be a safety thing, could be like people might have families and stuff like that. People have various reasons why they don't want to use their real identity here, also a safety thing as well. So but at what point does venting become problematic? Because like we all need an outlet, we all need to vent every now and then, and I actually think that venting is really healthy. But is there a specific point where it becomes toxic?
I think that point comes when um, somebody is expressing their views as, this is how it is for the entire industry. When they're
Hmm.
projecting all of those like hurt or trauma, or um, negative thoughts onto the entire community as a whole, onto the entire industry as a whole. Um, I think that's when it goes past the point of a healthy vent to where it could start getting toxic and dangerous. And then with those projections of all of those feelings, it it can start being targeted towards other sex workers, either out of frustration or um, I don't want to say jealousy, but it can be targeted to certain sex workers because they're presenting a brand that might seem, like they're successful, they don't have any problems that they need to complain about. They're projecting this glamorized version of themselves, and this other person who is feeling like this big and needs to release all of those negative thoughts, they're gonna find somebody to kind of target and put down because they're resentful. They're not having a good time in the industry, but they don't know how else to express that. They don't know where else to share it and how to share it in a healthy way. So I think that's when it becomes a problem, when they're talking for um the entire industry, and then they and also yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. I really hate to see that too, because I've definitely seen some problematic things said, or, statements that are made that are generalized statements and blanket statements that don't apply to everyone. And especially like when these folks like start going to the media and stuff too, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so,
Mm.
so problematic. Right. And I've seen that too as well. So yeah, it's really like a slippery slope because yeah, I have definitely seen a lot of people almost like it's basically harassment that I see, a lot of online bullying that I'm seeing a lot with these accounts, that I'm just seeing that people are just hiding now behind these add-on accounts, which to me that's not what the original purpose was intended for these accounts. So it's just kind of like really sad to see that being soured in a way, and that going down like this downward slope of like, is this all you have to contribute to our community right now? Yeah. Yeah. It's really, really frustrating with that. Um, Talking about this and the negativity, how, like, do you ever see this as, perpetuating the stigma in our industry even further, or like stereotypes, internalized homophobia? I think you're nodding your head. Let's talk about that for a
Yeah.
minute. You're like, yes, yes, yes.
I think that's where the other problem starts coming into play too, because um, especially on a platform like social media, like everybody has the ability to see this conversation that's going on, and um, if if you're continually saying like, no, here's how it really is, like all sex workers, they don't want to be a sex worker, they're just doing this to make a buck. Nobody could actually enjoy doing this kind of work. Like it's always going to be degrading, it's always going to be um men using women, that just continuing different like stereotypes like that. I think it can be so harmful to what sex workers are trying to achieve in just normalizing it as work. um, because while it's valid, there are going to be some really shitty experiences in sex work. That's totally true. There's risk factors, there's danger, there's stigma, there's all sorts of things that make this job a really tough job. But if you are going to start perpetuating that this is like as a blanket statement, this is how it is, this is the entire community's experience, then how are we supposed to work towards having rights as sex workers? Why would a general population want to support us or help us achieve any sort of rights, or
Yeah, or
not even
progression.
rights, but just an understanding. Yeah. um
Yeah.
if it's such a bad industry, then why should we entertain allowing it to continue? Like, let's just make all sex work illegal. So I
Yeah.
think it just does so much harm to keep perpetuating that this is everyone's experience. It's all exploitative. It's always dangerous. You know, nobody's doing this out of their own free will or because they chose to wake up in the morning and be a sex worker. Like, so I think it can just do a lot more harm than good. I think there's healthier ways
Yeah.
to vent your frustration, but unfortunately, I don't
Yeah.
think enough people have the support that they need. Like they have the healthy support that they need.
Yeah, and I think that really is like a theme here. Not having the resources, not having support, not having healthy people around you, you being very vulnerable and alone in this work and in this world, that actually can really eat you up inside and feels like you have nowhere to go. And then that turns into all these negative things that we've mentioned, that internalized whorephobia and having this wrong, I mean, not wrong, maybe wrong is the wrong word, but a negative outlook on the industry, which is, some people's experience. I'm not going to deny that, but then to try to say that that's for everyone's experience is wrong in my opinion. Before we move on, I know we were talking about internalized whorephobia. Did you want to go ahead and define that quickly as well for the audience, for those who might know what that term is?
I think in the simplest way to explain it, at least for myself, is just internalized shame at being a part of this industry and not having a healthy understanding or uh, I guess outlook on being a part of this community. It's, you're not accepting that you're a sex worker and that can be okay because you're too focused on the
Mm-hmm.
stigmas surrounding sex work. So you're feeling a lot of shame and haven't been able to process that and just
Mm-hmm.
accept this as the work that it is. And I think it requires a lot of, your own internal work and deciding
Oh yeah.
yeah, what
Yeah.
how you feel about your life and your choices and how you decide to operate within the industry itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a really great definition. Like, I would also agree with you on that. Like, it's almost like a self hatred of yourself being in the industry and not wanting to be a part of it, and having that stigma, the shame part of it as well is so huge. I felt that when I was like first going into it. I was just like, "Oh, I don't know, I don't want to be labeled as a sex worker." But then, as you mentioned, you got to do your own work. Why are you having these feelings? You need to kind of untangle that and get down to the core of like, what is it about sex work that makes me uncomfortable, and kind of work your way out of that.
I totally agree, and I think there's different levels of that, the whorephobia, the internalized shame, and um, different ways that people experience that because it's not as just as basic as like, oh well, I'm hating the fact that I'm part of sex work. I think there's it's very nuanced. Like you can be in this industry, but you can put yourself at a different level in the industry because, oh well, this woman might do full service, but I don't do that. I only give hand jobs, so I'm not as much of a whore. Like it's trying to compartmentalize and rationalize it to yourself to make yourself feel better
Yes.
about
Yes.
being a whore. So, I mean, it's
We're
yeah,
all
some people
horrors in the end.
work on yeah, exactly. Mhm.
No, exactly. That's a huge piece of it as well. And there's so many different layers of the horror, like the hierarchy, well, which is also related to horophobia as well. But like, yes, like non-contact parts of sex work versus full service parts of sex work versus street-based sex work. And there's so many different levels, and people thinking that they're better than a level that is quote unquote beneath them. Um, yeah, it's super problematic. Again, reinforces these stereotypes, which we really want to stray away from. And as I just said, we're all whores in the end. So it's not about that's not about that. It's just about, like, you owning what you do and you being comfortable with the work that it is that you do. But I'm sorry, we're going on all these tangents, which I'm loving, by the way. But going back
I'm bad
to the
for
toxic part of this all. I mean, yeah, venting, and we were talking about, talking about venting, talking about people that are telling it like it is in the community. Do you think, and I'm just asking for your opinion, but do you think this is as dangerous as, say, people on like TikTok or Strip Talk talking about how sensationalized and how glamorized the industry is? Do you think it's kind of the same but on a different scale? I don't know. Do you think it's as dangerous as that?
I think it's on the same I guess
Pedestal?
on the same spectrum of it. Like
Yeah.
it's just a different area of sex work, you know, whether you're a dancer, whether you're a massage attendant, whether you're a full service provider or a dom, or, you know, whatever it may be, a content creator. There's, I think, just still different ways that it can be toxic to each parts of this community to have these anon accounts. And, you know, like you said, telling it like it is one thing, but when you're focusing completely on the negative and just perpetuating stigmas and stereotypes, then it's a whole other thing.
Totally. And we haven't talked about this yet in the conversation, but like these anon accounts, like who do they affect mainly? Or like, do you think it affects like the clients? Do you think it like affects other sex workers, or a mix of both? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a good mix of both. I think it's damaging to the community, and that includes clients, sex workers, and then the onlookers of the community, um, because it's uh, it, not that it's creating drama within the community. I think you can pick and choose who you want to follow. You can ignore certain things. You can brush it off, and like if you have a good um healthy sense of who you are as a sex worker, you can kind of ignore and move past that. You know, you don't internalize it, and you just like, okay, cool. It's just another troll. I'm just going to let it be. I don't have time for this. But I think, I mean, after a while, when it continues to happen and it starts becoming a larger problem, it becomes frustrating for other sex workers who are like, you know what, this is not, it's not how it is for everybody, you know, like please stop speaking for everybody. It really sucks that that's your experience, but it's not everybody's experience. And it's more like a slap in the face too when you want to reach out to these people but you can't. You want to offer them support in a healthy way, or make suggestions of, you know, well, if you're having a tough time with this, you know, here's resources, here's what I've done, here, you know, certain things like that. But I think when it's reached a certain point of somebody being that resentful or that angered or disgruntled by being a sex worker, it's harder to help them. It's harder to reach out to them, and then you're trying to reach out to no one because they're anonymous. You don't even know who to help, and it,
Yeah.
like, as you were asking, sorry, I went off on a tangent again, but it affects clients too, because when they see this, like when the clients end up scrolling through Twitter and seeing these anonymous accounts and the discussions that go on, it makes them feel more guilty, I think, because
Mm.
the sex worker has broken that fourth wall, they've broken that fantasy, they have
Yeah.
allowed them to see behind the curtain. And clients, I mean, they don't want to see that. They don't want to see the reality of
No.
the shitty parts of this job. I think it's important that there is an understanding. I'm not saying like let's continue to glamorize the industry and you know, keep everyone in this bubble, But I think there's better ways of doing it. I think there's better ways of having a constructive conversation and explaining that,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this was my experience. I'm only speaking from my experience. I'm not speaking on behalf of everybody else in the industry. And so it can
Yeah.
really, I have heard from other clients that they see things online, they internalize it, they feel like a shitty human being for even being part of the industry. They have to start
Mm.
questioning their ethics and their morals. And while I think that's good and done in a healthy way, because I think everybody should participate in this industry ethically, that is something that you have to do on like a personal level. Um,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
it does really suck when a client just sees this and automatically thinks like, oh my god, what am I doing? I'm abusing all of these women. They don't want to be with me. They don't, I'm just throwing money and putting a band-aid on a situation for them because this is just, a get rich quick scheme for them or something like that. So I think it makes the
Right.
client feel like a very horrible person, like despicable, and I don't think that of many of the people I've met in this industry. Like there are some despicable people out there, but I'm lucky
Yes.
enough to or be privileged enough to have met some amazing, wonderful human beings in this line of work. So
McKenna, I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, I mean, like, and I'm just really glad we brought up the client's perspective as well, because a lot of the times we don't really talk about the clients. We don't give them enough praise. And I know there's a lot of shitty ones out there. Yes, I am very aware there's a lot of shitty clients. I've had my fair share. But without clients, we wouldn't have a job. We wouldn't have an audience. We wouldn't have a fan base and stuff. So sometimes we got to think about that too. And yes, like with these non accounts, you're kind of screwing up your own branding a little bit too. And I'm not saying that you can't be vulnerable and you can't be real, but sometimes there just needs to be a balance, I find. Um, because again, if that's the only thing that you're perpetuating out there, then that's what they're going to start thinking. And that can kind of like twist what the client's perspective is. And, maybe they won't even come back anymore. I also think about that kind of stuff as well. So, and I've also had some very nice clients in my time as well. And people that really do care about like your well-being. But then sometimes with these non-accounts, it's just like, oh my God, we're just we look like we're just trying to scam them, which I think is also a little bit shitty. I mean, that's not the way that I would ever phrase things. That's not the way I conduct my own business, but you do you. Right?
I think actually bringing up that point specifically, I think that also creates another problem. And I don't want to say this to sound um better than thou or whatever, but the way things can be worded in anon accounts, it comes off as this persona of, it's like all these sex workers are just hustlers. We treat men like an ATM. They're all disgusting pigs. And it puts that stigma or that stereotype back on a sex worker as like, oh yeah, we're the bottom of society because this is how we treat other people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
it does the rest of the community like a huge injustice, because I would never talk to another person, like not a client, not another person on the street, in that sense, in that way that some of these things are worded online. And it's like, it makes me feel like kind of disgusting. I'm like, why would you say that about another person? You know? You can have a bad appointment with a client and they could be a really uninteresting person, not dangerous or anything, but it was just, like there's no connection or whatever. Um, but that doesn't mean that they're, like they deserve to be shit on for it because they're just boring, you know?
Yeah.
So
There's a lot of shitting on clients. And like unless
It can
you're
be, yeah.
branding like unless you're like a findom or an femdom, then that is like your role, or like a dominatrix. Yes, and I
Mhm.
understand. But like I've seen so much language that I personally view as problematic, and personally not the way that, like, I don't think it's ethical because I don't think it looks professional. But that's maybe an unpopular opinion, but that's just how I see it, and I just think it does more damage.
I share the same opinion, but I think it can be difficult to express that in a like a politically correct kind of way because some people will go on the attack when you say like I'm trying to represent myself professionally, and other people will say, well, no, you're trying to sound elitist. You're trying to sound
Yes,
you know, like you're the high end escort because you're
right,
not talking in a certain way, you're not using certain slang, you're not calling them a trick. Like I've had so many,
right.
like I don't like that word. I don't feel it like it's
I don't like that
respectful.
either.
If I expect my client not to call me a whore in person or anything else that I find has a denigrating kind of sense to it, why would I call them a trick? Like
Yeah,
respect goes both
it
ways.
goes both ways.
So,
Yeah, it's a humanizing
yeah.
thing. Like, if we want to be humanized as sex workers, and we want people to view us as, legitimate, this is as like legitimized work, then I feel we should treat it as such, and also humanize people that are our clients that are paying us as well. So that's my 2 cents. I'm not trying to come off as elitist. It's my personal opinion. That's just how I run my own business. So yeah, hopefully that doesn't ruffle any feathers, but I'm sure some people would agree.
I think I'm past the point of ruffling feathers.
This whole conversation is an
What was my
unpopular
point?
opinion. I'm like, let's get back to it.
Might be a good title for my blog.
I'm still looking forward to your next post. I'm trying to remember. You were also mentioning kind of trying to suggest other ways and to like validate sex workers and these non-accounts, but doing so in a non-harmful way. Can you describe, or maybe like suggest a couple things too that can maybe help someone that might be listening that might be up behind in a non-account?
I the way I've tried to approach it is by listening to understand, like actively listening to what the problem is, but going a little beyond like their, and maybe it's just one general tweet that they made and it's something that comes across as quite toxic. I think a lot of people will jump on that immediately and go, "Oh, business must be slow for you." Like, okay, clearly this person is going through something. They're not sharing it in a healthy way, but we also shouldn't approach it in an attack, because then it's gonna keep the problem going. It's gonna become a vicious cycle of, you know, continually attacking each other, not showing more understanding and support and sharing of resources or trying to have a healthy discussion. People are already on the defense. They're feeling isolated, they're feeling, alone, and it makes sense why they're going to be like attacking each other. They feel like there's no other um outlet for them, and as soon as people start dogpiling online, it's not going to help resolve things. And I am guilty of this too. I've not approached things in the right way and understood that, this person's hurting, they're going through something, because I felt like it was an attack on me. So in return, I'm like, okay, let's just cancel this person. They're hurting the community. And you know what? I ate those words. I fucking regretted it. I was like, you know what? We should have approached this in a different, more understanding way. Um, but at the same time, once somebody like hurt people. So once you get to that point, it's really hard to like help somebody. It can be really hard to get across to them and tell them, there's a different way. Like there's people out here that aren't just out for themselves. They want to help. Like this community can be very understanding and supportive, but in turn you do have to be a little bit vulnerable. You do have to want to accept help and learn from it and listen to people who have more experience and tell you, you know, you might be doing this wrong. Like here's why you aren't getting the kind of success that you want. But listen, like it might not be the advice you want to hear, but here's what we have to offer. So it goes both ways. You have to accept and understand and be willing to listen and not be on the attack. Like we have to stop attacking each other. I think that's the only way that
Yes.
we're gonna solve any of this continued toxicity. Just
Hmm.
yeah.
Collaboration over competition any day. And I would also offer some insight as well in terms of like, I always, if I'm going to be commenting on a post, then I always try to come at it from like an educational point of view. Like, I'm not trying to lecture you, but I'm like, listen, like, giving context and giving like providing an explanation why this might be not in your best interest or whatever it is may be. But coming from that kind of approach, like for me, maybe it's just a bit more gentler and not trying to come on as aggressive or attacking in any way. And hopefully the person would respond in a respectful manner. But the experiences I've been on have been very much claws out, even when I try to do it from that approach. But then after that, I just kind of leave it because, like, it's up to you to kind of take it, for you to digest that information, and yeah, take it or leave it, and just continue being the same way. So, yeah, it's not so
I've
great
realized in
sometimes.
this industry, you have to decide what your capacity is to help other people. And while I
Mm-hmm.
think it sucks, like I don't like the idea of gatekeeping information, but you can't
Yes,
just give everything and give all of yourself away. You can be
that's
as helpful
exhausting.
as you are able to help. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't be everything in this industry to other people. Like our time is precious. That's why we get paid for it. Um,
Yes.
so I think you like just try to do good, even if it's in small amounts. Like it's better than being creating more toxicity or keeping that going.
I agree. And I know that you also mentioned in our notes before, but like, when you see this kind of seeping into a person's like main account and stuff too, that's like a next level. Can we quickly talk about that before wrapping up?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I mean, that itself, I have also seen that. And it might come off as irrational at that point. And as you mentioned, breaking that fourth wall. But tell us about like your opinion on that aspect.
I think when it turns into a situation where it's not coming from an anon account and it's somebody who's been involved in the industry, whether they're still in the industry or not, they may have retired. I think that can do even more harm than what just an anon account can do, especially if it's
Mhm.
promoting something that's toxic or harmful to the industry. But because they have more weight behind it, it's not just this faceless persona. uh it it can have a little more recognition, like just not just amongst the community and the clients, but mainstream media. Like if somebody has a 20, 30, 50,000 plus following and they're starting to speak for the entire community about their specific experience and how it was damaging to them and harmful and traumatic, um, I think that's a whole other issue. It causes more problems for the entire industry because now we're not just going up against an anonymous commenter on the industry. It's somebody who is recognizable and somebody who people might listen to because it's somebody that they've followed for a very long time. And I think that is where it's dangerous, where we have to be a little more proactive in saying, they don't speak for the entire industry. Everybody's experience within this industry is completely their own. There are the bad sides, and then there are the amazing, wonderful sides to it. But you have to understand that it's not universal. It's so individualized, and your experience is your own. It's not, you know, the whole community is. Mm.
Yeah, yeah, and especially like when like you mentioned, they have these large accounts, these large followings, and like some from the media kind of ask them for a quote, or even can get the attention of anti-sex work organizations that can be super super dangerous for us. So just got to be careful about what you're putting out there. Is kind of like my last couple words on this topic, because they can have some consequences. Of course, once you put it out there, yes, you can delete it, but still can catch the attention of the wrong people and into the wrong hands. But this is such a fantastic conversation. I'm really glad that we were able to talk about this super niche topic, but like it has been on my mind, and I'm sure it has been on a lot of your minds as well, for all of from all of you that are listening at home. But McKenna, before I let you go, where can we all find you?
So mostly my Twitter, because I have my hands in too many different social medias, but mostly Twitter. You can follow me at your McKenna. But I also just got unbanned from my old Twitter, so if you want to follow me there too.
What?
It was banned for about a year. Yeah, I ruffled some feathers. And then I got mass reported. So it was
Oh my
banned for
god.
just over a year. Now I
Wow.
have like my 7,500 followers back. But yeah, I was thinking maybe I'll turn that into like a spicy account. I don't know. I haven't decided yet.
Hey.
So that one is my only McKenna on Twitter. And my website is onlymckenna.com if you want to go check that out, where you can also find my blog if you want to, get a little more into my head and learn more about my experiences in the industry and my big opinions on it as well. I go a little bit more in depth on, how I've gotten into the industry and how I feel about it, and also some relationship and other
Yeah.
boring stuff in there too. So
It's a great blog. I should all check it out. And all of the links are going to be available in the show notes below if you haven't clicked already. For those of you who want to get in touch with me, it is Stripped by Sia on Twitter. Again, please follow my Instagram that was suspended. It's Stripped by Sia podcast now on Instagram. Where else am I? Strippedbysia.com if you want to pitch yourself to be on the show. And of course, my Patreon, which is patreon.com/strippedbysia if you want to become a patron and financially support the show. And yeah, it's new episodes every single Sunday, dropping at midnight Pacific Standard Time. Tune in next week for another fantastic episode with another fabulous sex worker talking about the industry, destigmatizing the work. Thank you so much for joining me today, McKenna. It was truly a pleasure today.
thank you so much for having me. It was awesome meeting you.
Thank you. You're listening to Stripped by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Steph Sia. Music by Ted D. Graphic design by Maria Bellandarama, and photography by Ian Dabrin.